For our viewers just joining us, we are on the air with breaking news on this NBC News special report. A shooting at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania campaign rally. The former president has been hurt in an apparent assassination attempt. The Secret Service says the president is safe and that the shooter is dead. Tonight, Donald Trump is posting on Truth Social, his platform online, that he was hit with a bullet that he says pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he felt it ripping through his skin. We have a lot to get to, but I want to pause here. We're going to roll the video of what happened just after 6 p.m. here on the East Coast while Mr. Trump was speaking. I want you to listen closely also to the sound of the shots and what you hear in the moments right after that until Mr. Trump is rushed into his motorcade. Watch.
A little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Move to the spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down. Down.
Are we good?
Shooter's down.
Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
We're good to move.
We're clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoe.
Watch out.
Wait.
You see that fist in the air from former President Trump as he is taken into his motorcade and then taken away. This is a map, the approximate area of the stage where Mr. Trump was shot and the location of the suspected gunman's body. Here's what we know right now, that suspected shooter fired a weapon from a roof outside the perimeter of the rally. So he was outside the Secret Service security area. The alleged gunman is dead. Also, a spectator who was attending the rally has been killed. 2 other spectators were badly hurt. President Biden has spoken with Mr. Trump. He is returning right now to the White House from Delaware, where earlier this evening, the president addressed the nation.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
Former President Trump has put out a statement extending his condolences to the loved ones of the rally-goer who was killed and to the others who were hurt. He also thanked law enforcement and first responders for their quick action and says he looks forward to the Republican convention in Milwaukee that is set to begin on Monday. I want to bring in now NBC's Dasha Burns, who was at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. She was there when the shots were fired. Dasha, bring us up to speed as to where things stand now, what we know about the whereabouts of the former president, and what happens from here.
Hallie, as reporters in this day and age, you and I both know we cover shootings. It is a modern day reality. It is very rare, though, and certainly has never happened to me, that we, instead of going to the scene in the aftermath, we are actually there on site and witnessing all of this. We were there, our team, in the moments when the shots rang out. I can walk you through just briefly to give you a sense of what it was like in the crowd there was a transition of emotions from chaos and fear and confusion to you will see and hear in that video that you've been playing once the former president puts his fist up into the air, then cheers and trying to figure out what exactly happened. We are now in the parking lot outside of the venue. We've been here for hours. Earlier, we showed you a massive traffic jam. Thousands and thousands of cars were in this parking lot, thousands of people at this rally coming to what they thought was going to be a typical Trump rally, a typical political rally. That's, of course, not what they experienced. We've been talking to witnesses here, sharing our own experience with them and hearing from them as well. I want you to take a listen to some of the conversations that I've had. Joe and Donna, a mother-son, who say that they were right there. They were in the area where this happened. Donna, let me start with you. First of all, are you okay?
Yes, I'm shook. I'm definitely shook up, but I'm okay. Yeah, and Trump was talking, watching him. I heard pop, pop, pop. I thought it was like a cap gun. And my son's like, gun, get down. And next thing you know, everybody around us was down. And then once we got down, we was up at the top of our bleacher, the men were yelling to all the snipers and all the cops to come over because he had shot a man and a woman in our bleacher. We heard the one is very fatal. We don't know that for sure, but they were down. They went out on grenades.
So Joe, what exactly did you see? Because from our vantage point, we couldn't see what was going on. We didn't see any individuals. All we could do was listen for those sounds. But what did you see?
Again, I was watching the president, and you hear the gunshots go off. Remarks from up top said that the shooter actually climbed up the back of the bleacher. And after we got down, like my mom said, there was 2 people down. They were calling for medics. We did see the 2 people that were shot, and we saw them get carried out. Like, I don't know. The one didn't look like they were okay. I hope the other one's okay, and just may God watch over them tonight.
And Dawn, you said 2 people. Were these 2 people fellow attendees of the rally? And what kind of did you see them get shot directly, or did you just see the aftermath?
No, you just heard the noise. You heard the pop, 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 seeing the aftermath, and neither of them looked good. They were both down. Nobody was talking. Nobody was moving.
What was going through your mind as you were witnessing all of this?
Are they still here? And am I going to get shot? That's what's going through my mind. He's holding my hand, and we were going to get up and try to get out of here. And some gentleman there said, no, you stay down. So we stayed down, and then we finally heard everybody evacuate, and he grabbed my hand, and we got out of there.
And Joe, what was your state of mind coming into this rally today? What were you expecting, and what are you feeling now as we all experienced a day that none of us thought would come?
Well, I was excited. I mean, this is our second rally, and the first one, Trump is very energetic when he comes to these, and well, now I want to vote for him more than ever.
Why is that?
Just to send a message to these people. They can't stop us.
Don't stop us. That's right.
Don, how are you feeling? I mean, you're here with your son. Of course, you want to protect your baby, and you don't want them or yourself to be in any danger. What were those mama instincts in that moment, and how are you feeling right now?
Exactly. My mama instincts were when he grabbed my hand, I knew my son was scared to death because he was holding my hand. He had held my hand since he was probably 5 or 6 years old. And so he held on to my hand, and you can imagine, my heart went into a million pieces. All I kept thinking was we got to be safe and get out of here. And I agree with Joe. Vote for Trump because this country got to get back in line. This is out of control.
How did you get out ultimately? How did you get here to safety?
That once they evacuated us, because right where we were sitting, we were able to just keep on going. We actually watched the snipers and everybody over on the side for a few minutes, but we just got out of there. We were scared.
What did you see from your vantage point of the snipers? These were the people protecting the former president.
That's correct. And now they were over in the lawn. They just were watching every single person with their guns going by. I believe the one injured person was over there that they had. Wasn't he on the one on the ground?
Yeah, so before they evacuated, they carried the 2 injured people out. Then they yelled for us to get evacuated. At that point, all the Secret Service were up in our section with the guns, and they were all in the field. Because like I said, rumor was he climbed up the back of our bleacher.
Hallie, I also spoke to a gentleman who was right next to the person who was shot and killed at this rally. He was an OBGYN, a doctor who said he actually helped to carry that man out of the venue, describing that harrowing scene to us. So many people witnessed this tragedy today and are trying to wrap their minds around what happened. The sun has set here, but the reality is still dawning on all of us that were in that rally, what we witnessed and what this is going to mean for the future of this country, for the future of this campaign, for the future of this election. We know the former president has posted on Truth Social that he's okay. He's been injured in his right ear. He did send condolences to the family of the person who was injured fatally. This is something that, of course, President Biden has spoken about as well. The two of them have spoken. And now we're just 48 hours from the Republican National Convention, a massive event and an event where security was already a concern. And now it remains to be seen just what this means for the protection around the former president, certainly to be escalated after this, Hallie.
Dasha Burns, live for us there. Dasha, thank you so much. I want to go to our investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, who's with us. And Tom, you've got some new details on how this shooting took place. What can you tell us?
I can, Hallie, but first I think we should get to some additional information that myself and my colleagues have been learning, and including our colleagues Jonathan Deans and Dan DeLuce. The individual who is believed to have tried to shoot former President Trump is somebody who is not a foreign national. There's no nexus here, we've been told, to any sort of foreign national or foreign country. Separately, it's possible this person could be from the general western part of Pennsylvania. And we're in the process of hunting that down now, and obviously we'll continue to report and get as much detail as possible. As far as the location of where this alleged shooter was, we just saw the video, and it's an incredible video of the former president being taken from the stage. And you can see here now on the map, you call it 148 yards, 150, 130, but generally put, these are the two locations where these individuals were located. That's a manufacturing company on the left-hand side of your screen and a roof that belongs to that, at least according to a Google search. We haven't been able to reach that particular firm yet to confirm the details of that. And then you can see where the stage was set up today for the rally. Now, the Secret Service's perimeter is, of course, and you know this very well, Hallie, from your time on covering so many various campaigns, you can't bring in a weapon. You're going to be searched. There's magnetometers. There's people to check you. But it appears that this was outside, and we are told from the Secret Service this was outside of their area where they would have checked people. Now, there is video of snipers on a roof who appear to notice or fire at this individual. And we're in the process of confirming some of the details of that video before we show it to you, just to make sure. But if that video is accurate, it does show the counter sniper team. So these are Secret Service agents or part of federal law enforcement their job is to try to look for somebody like this, identify them, and if need be, take that individual out. And it appears that that was part of what happened here today. But you can see how close this was to the stage, and you can see how all this happened. We had video moments ago, or earlier, I should say, that showed this rooftop. Here it is. The blurred object there is the body of the alleged shooter, who's believed to be there. It is a man. We've reported that previously, and the individual appears to be wearing some sort of a tan camouflage pant, Hallie, but it's difficult to make out a lot of details about them from what we've seen. So that's kind of the latest on this investigation, which is moving quickly. As we've reported, the FBI director has personally briefed the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and he's also talked to the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor about this investigation and plans to continue those updates, obviously, over the course of the next several hours and days.
Tom Winter, thank you. I know you're staying close to your phone and close to a camera. Appreciate that. I want to share some developing news now coming into us from the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who says right now that former President Trump has now left the Butler area. This is in a statement posted online on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying that he and his wife are thankful that Mr. Trump's team reports that he is fine, and we continue to wish him a full and speedy recovery. The Pennsylvania governor goes on to say that federal law enforcement officials will continue to lead, of course, on the investigation into the attempted shooting of former President Trump, this shooting, and Pennsylvania State Police will lead the investigation into the shooting of the other victims here in Butler, Pennsylvania. Obviously, the governor's indication that Mr. Trump has left the Butler area suggests that perhaps Mr. Trump is now on his way back to one of his homes. We've been talking here tonight to some folks who attended that rally today. I want to bring in one of them. John David Longo is the mayor of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us.
I'm here.
Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay, can you tell us what you heard and what you saw at that rally?
Ma'am, can you hear me all right?
Sure can, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try one more time. Can you tell us what you saw at the rally, if you can hear me?
Of course. Thank you very much. Where to start? You know, the day started very early in the day. Everybody was full of smiles and elated to be there in support of President Trump. Lots of folks were reminiscing about his visit to us in Butler County in Halloween of 2020, and all of us were expecting that we were going to be able to enjoy another joyous occasion. You know, I had the pleasure of participating in the rally, and I even had the pleasure of chatting with the president 15, 20 minutes before this awful thing happened. And it was just such a sad thing to see. And I'm so sorry for the family and friends of the individual whose life was stolen from him because of this maniac's violence.
One of the things we talked about earlier, Mr. Mayor, this is an area of Pennsylvania that is, so to speak, Trump country. The people who had attended, based on the reporting that we've done, were excited to be there. They were excited to hear from the former president on the eve of the Republican convention in Milwaukee, a key moment for his campaign and for his candidacy here. Can you share any insights into how your community is doing tonight?
My community's thoughts and prayers, first and foremost, are with the friends and family of the individual whose life was taken from him today. We are with him. We're grieving with that family, first and foremost. And second, we are in deep blood red Trump country here in northern Butler County in the Slippery Rock area, and our thoughts are with the president. But I got to tell you, man, you know, I saw a lot of ugly today, but I saw a lot of good today. I saw a lot of good come out of people on the ground during this time when folks were scared. People took the initiative and they stood up and they helped one another, and that is representative of everything that Butler County conservatives stand up for and believe in.
One of the images that we're seeing as you're speaking here, Mr. Mayor, is the former president delivering a couple of fist pumps, essentially, to the crowd after it was clear that he had been hurt. You could see blood on his face, and he was being rushed off stage by Secret Service. As you were watching that, what went through your mind in that moment?
Yeah, well, my vantage point was incredible because I was sitting just to stage left, first row. I was just, 20 feet from the president, so I got to see all of that unfold as I was scanning around. And at first I felt relief, of course. I thought, thank God President Trump is up and standing. And second, I thought, thank goodness that this wasn't even worse. I mean, the potential for this to be even worse than it was, as awful as it is, was just humongous. So it was a bit of relief, but also too, it was harrowing. I was very scared for the future, and I thought, my goodness, what is it that we've gotten ourselves into, and what's next here?
Before I let you go, have you had any contact with any members of the Trump campaign since this happened? Have they reached out at all?
I haven't spoken with anybody officially on the ground level with the Trump campaign, but I will say that I've heard from plenty of people who are close to the campaign, plenty of Butler County Republican leaders here in the area, and once more, all of us are just thinking and praying for the family of the individual whose life was lost, and our thoughts and prayers, of course, with the president and with the entire nation right now.
A very difficult evening. John David Longo, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being with us here on this NBC News special report tonight. I appreciate it. I want to turn now to Garrett Haake, who covers former President Trump, who has been part of our coverage tonight. And Garrett, some new perhaps clues as to the former president's location, or at least the location that he has apparently departed, according to Governor Shapiro here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we know right now where the former president is not, and that's in the Butler area where this rally was held. But beyond that, we don't have a lot more specific information about his location. And I suppose that's probably to be anticipated after an assassination attempt, as we now know that this is. But what we have right now is a situation where the Trump campaign is in something of a communications lockdown. They are not speaking with press. They are not speaking publicly, really at all, beyond that message from the former president on his social media platform and a fundraising blast that just went out with no particular details, but it says only a message from President Trump, "I will never surrender." For all we know, that could have been a planned thing for the end of this rally tonight, regardless. So we're in right now the uncharted territory in which we've found ourselves so familiar this campaign season, with the former president out of the hospital, as far as we know, out of the Butler area, but not yet returned to his New Jersey golf club where we expected him to spend the night tonight, nor headed to Milwaukee, where we do still expect him to appear on Monday, according to the convention organizers and the Trump campaign, who said in a statement earlier this evening, essentially, that the show must go on. But Hallie, how different will that show be? How much will this moment, this attempted assassination of a presidential candidate, change the tenor, the direction, the issue set of this campaign? It's impossible to know right now, but I can tell you that the former president's allies on Capitol Hill are already moving very quickly to keep this incident in the spotlight. They've announced investigations that will come in the House, the Speaker putting out a statement to that effect, the chair of the Oversight Committee, which seems keen to claim jurisdiction here, inviting the head of the Secret Service to come and testify a week from Monday. So imagine all week next week you'll have the Republican convention. Then the following Monday you could very well see the head of the Secret Service answering questions about this in front of lawmakers on the Hill. That's just one chamber. I think we'll also see the Senate dive into this issue, too, to see what possible failures there could have been here by the Secret Service, what other steps could have been taken to prevent this incident tonight from coming as close as it appears to have of taking the life of a soon-to-be presidential nominee of a major party.
Garrett Haake, thank you. I want to turn now to our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. And Kelly, we know that former President Trump has spoken with President Biden tonight, based on what the White House is telling us. As the president himself, and I think we have a live look at his plane, is getting ready to change his plans. He's heading back to Washington earlier than expected, Kelly.
That's right. He had been in Rehoboth, Delaware, will be departing here shortly to come back to Washington. And the president will be able to, by virtue of being back, have additional briefings here in person tomorrow. Of course, the powers of the presidency go wherever he goes, and he was receiving briefings at his home in Delaware, but made a decision that he wanted to come back to the White House tonight. We expect him to return to Washington after midnight, sometime around 12:30 or so, based on the schedule as we understand it. You pointed out that he placed a call to former President Trump. They were able to connect after trying earlier, shortly after the incident. In the immediate aftermath of that, President Biden tried to reach him, was unable to do so. They spent a little more time. They were able to connect and have a personal connection. You heard the president earlier tonight speaking publicly, talking about the fact that there can be no political violence tolerated and that everyone must condemn it, and that former President Trump should have been able to carry out this rally without any threat, and that should not have happened. So President Biden trying to get additional information. We now know he has been briefed by an array of top government officials who will be responsible for various aspects of this investigation. Now, of course, there is a political environment here, and these two men are not only predecessor and successor, and both who have been commander-in-chief and in the Oval Office. They are, of course, running against each other in this heated political environment. The Biden campaign is telling its own staff and members to hold off from any commentary on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania today, to not talk about this, to try to turn down any of the political rhetoric and to have a pause. We have seen this in the political landscape at different times when there are sad or unexpected events of a variety of types, that campaigns will have a moment of pause. Everything from deaths in the family to hurricanes to other kinds of issues that command people's immediate attention. This is highly, highly rare and is very upsetting, and there are many questions to be answered and pursued in terms of the investigation. So turning down some of the rhetoric, turning down some of the political engagement that would typically happen. Now, what we don't know is how the president's schedule will be affected beyond tonight and tomorrow. He, of course, had a planned schedule that included some appearances publicly before and around the Republican National Convention, which is set to begin in Milwaukee. Sometimes candidates sit out their opponents' convention, but in the last couple of cycles, we've seen more intense and robust engagement, regardless of the other calendar and the other campaign's biggest event, the convention itself, the nominating convention. So many questions to find out in the next day or two about what the schedules will be. What we do know is the president will get more briefings tomorrow. He's heard from the FBI director, the head of the Secret Service, his top Homeland Security officials, both at the cabinet level and the internal White House advisor, and all of those expected experts in various fields interacting here. So there's a political component, there's an investigative one, and there is certainly just sort of the tone of the nation right now, where the president wants things to be about not accepting any kind of violence like this as he tries to get more answers. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell standing by for us tonight at the White House. Kel, thank you. I want to bring in now Evie Pompouras, a former Secret Service agent. Evie, with your expertise, can you help us understand what's happening now inside that agency, inside the investigation, with the priority, presumably, of course, making sure that the former president gets to where he needs to go tonight?
So the first thing is, if we're looking at the investigative part, the FBI is the entity, the agency now that's going to come in and investigate what has happened. Now, this is done by design to keep the Secret Service out of the investigation, because if there is a security issue, a security flaw, a mistake, they don't want the Secret Service obviously investigating themselves. So the FBI comes in, and we received the reports. They came in immediately. They came to the site, secure it. They're starting to interview people. They're assessing who did what happened, and they're going to follow that investigation. As far as the suspect goes, or the individual that we believe took the shots, they're going to interview family members, friends, employers, employees, if he's a business owner, any mental health history. Were there any signs that this individual made threats in the past? So you're going to see a purge of social media accounts online. It's going to be subpoena after subpoena after subpoena to get as much information as possible to understand the why. Now, the bigger thing really is for something like this, and the priority is this a network of people? Obviously, you know, since the last assassination attempt we had, that was Ronald Reagan. And after that, we had 9/11. So it's different. Typically, historically, it's always been the lone wolf, the jackal, they would call it, who's going to come in to do something like this. But after 9/11, we see a different threat of terrorism. So the one thing the FBI is really going to focus on, is there a network of people? Is this a terrorist attack? It does not seem that it is that. Again, there's nothing's been confirmed, but it appears that it does not seem to be that. And it's starting to lead itself to that lone individual, that person. Now, as far as the Secret Service, I mean, there's reports already coming out that the director, Kimberly Cheadle, will be testifying before Congress, and they're going to ask her what happened. Now, when we look at that aerial shot that you guys have been pulling up, right, that aerial shot, we have the hardened perimeter, which is the perimeter that the Secret Service secures. Okay, so what does that mean? That's the perimeter basically that is blocked off, where you have the magnetometers there, where you have the hardcore element. So anybody that comes into that area is typically screened. Beforehand, it's actually cleared out. Dogs come through, military personnel, they check for bombs or any explosives, and then you power it up with manpower, poststanders, police, military, special agents. They lock it down. Then you control who comes in. You keep the area clean. So people going through magnetometer checkpoints. So that's the hardened security perimeter. Now, what we're hearing is this individual who took the shot was outside that perimeter. Now, just because they're outside that perimeter, it does not mean that you don't secure that. You do have a secure element out that way. So one of the things, or there's multiple things you do, you have local police patrolling the area, right? You can have post standards or USSS personnel perhaps also patrolling the area with local police. Now, the counter sniper entities, and what we're hearing through reports is there are 2 snipers on a rooftop in an adjacent building. Now, what they do is they want a high position.
I just want to stop you there, as we are just looking here at President Biden and his team. That's not the president, of course, that's his motorcade pulling up to Air Force One. He is departing. You see him going up the steps of Air Force One now, the back of the president, heading back to the White House after this apparent assassination attempt on former President Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. We're going to watch President Biden as he boards Air Force One again, leaving Delaware. He is returning here to Washington, turning around and giving a salute as he walks in to the plane. We are expecting a press conference in just about 15 minutes from now. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. We will take a very brief couple-second pause for more stations to join us right now. I'd like to welcome you back to this NBC News special report. I'm Hallie Jackson. We are on the air with breaking news. Earlier tonight, a shooting at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania campaign rally. The former president was injured in an assassination attempt. The Secret Service says the president is safe, that the suspected shooter is dead. We know that we have heard from Donald Trump, the former president, on his Truth Social online platform, posting he was hit with a bullet that he says pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he felt it ripping through his skin. Here's what we know right now. The alleged gunman fired a weapon from a roof outside the perimeter of the rally. So he was outside that typical Secret Service security area. The alleged gunman is dead, as is a spectator who was attending the rally. That person has been killed. 2 others were badly hurt. President Biden, you just saw him boarding Air Force One moments ago. He is headed back to Washington now. He says he has spoken. The White House says that he has spoken with Mr. Trump. Earlier this evening, you had President Biden addressing the nation, condemning the violence. Former President Trump, in his statement, extended condolences to the loved ones of the spectator, the rally-goer who was killed, and the others who were hurt. He also thanked law enforcement and first responders for their quick action. His campaign has also suggested he will be at the Milwaukee convention, the Republican convention, set to begin not long from now. I want to let folks know that in just about 15 minutes, we are expecting a news conference in Butler, Pennsylvania. And this may be where we get some answers to some of the key questions tonight. We expect federal law enforcement as well as local law enforcement to be there, presumably with a critical update on the investigation. We will bring that to you live the second that it happens. Before it does, I want to get to our colleague Kelly O'Donnell, our senior White House correspondent, who is at the White House. And Kelly, we saw President Biden boarding his plane. He is headed back here.
That is a change in his schedule, one brought out by these events where the president made a decision. We were told by sources familiar that he was at Mass earlier today when he learned of the incident involving the former president, made a decision that he wanted to speak publicly in the earliest point after he got some initial briefings, did that earlier tonight. Then as he gained more information, made the decision that he wants to leave Delaware to come back to the White House tonight. We expect he will get here sometime after midnight, likely around the 12:30 a.m. time, and that tomorrow it is expected he will have additional briefings with key law enforcement personnel from the Secret Service, the FBI, Homeland Security, and so forth. All the different threads of information that could give a better picture of what happened, who was involved, and what motivations may have been a part of this. He did have that personal connection with former President Trump by phone tonight after trying to reach him earlier at a time when we could presume that the former president was probably getting some medical care or just getting through the initial experience of this apparent assassination attempt and all of the turmoil associated with that. So they have now spoken and connected personally. We know additionally that the Biden campaign is saying to its own team, turn down the rhetoric, do not comment about this issue, put it on pause right now, and that the focus needs to be on bringing about calm, having some unity in the country, that we as a nation stand against political violence. Even though political violence has reared its head many times in our history, that now is a time with a heated campaign to try to turn down the rhetoric. So this could be a point where we could see some other changes in schedule. We simply don't know yet. These are fast-moving events. We're tracking each of these developments, and as we learn more, we'll bring it to you. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell live for us there from the White House. Kelly, thank you very much. I want to bring in Pennsylvania Congressman Dan Muser, who was at today's rally. He is joining us now. Congressman, thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's late, and I know it's been a difficult day.
Yeah, well, good to be with you. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened, what you saw happen, what you saw and heard there today in Butler?
Sure. It started as a typical rally. We had some pre-rally speeches, myself, Senate candidate Dave McCormick, Mike Kelly, my colleague in the House. The president arrived. We did our standard pictures and met with some people. And then he came out, and he wasn't speaking for more than 6 or 7 minutes when we heard rapid gunfire. The first couple of shots, I don't think any of us knew exactly what was going on. Yeah. But I guess it was maybe the fourth shot was when it hit the president. And when he put his hand up to his head and hit the deck, boy, everybody in the place knew what was going on. They knew we were under fire. So the Secret Service did its job. Our Pennsylvania state troopers were also highly engaged. There was a lot of security there. And then very, very sadly, a individual that was sitting just right behind me, a few rows, was also hit. And that was a bad scene. And my understanding is that individual was a fatality, that he was killed. So it was chaotic. It was a shame. And, we're lucky that the president, former President Trump, by a quarter of an inch, avoided assassination.
Congressman, just an incredibly traumatic evening. I'm going to ask for your patience. I want to pause this conversation for just a second because my colleague, our investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, is joining us with some breaking news on new details about the suspect. Tom, what's going on?
That's right, Hallie. Alongside our colleagues Kelly O'Donnell and Jonathan Dienst, federal investigators have tentatively identified the man who shot at former President Donald Trump today in Pennsylvania. He is a male described as approximately 20 years old and from Pennsylvania, according to 5 senior law enforcement officials briefed on the matter. So they have a tentative ID. They're still running things down from a law enforcement perspective, and that's the reason why they have not publicly announced the name, and we are not publicly announcing it either at this juncture. But again, the news is that federal investigators do have a tentative identification of the man who shot at former President Trump today. He's approximately 20 years old, from Pennsylvania, and that's according to 5 senior U.S. law enforcement officials. And as I always say, Hallie, and you're probably tired of me saying it over the years, this information it's an ongoing investigation. It's happening as we are live talking about it. So things are always subject to change. But the best information they have is that that's who this individual is. And as we get more information, we will certainly, of course, share it with you. But that's the latest.
Tom Winter, thank you. I'm going to let you get back to your phone. Some critical reporting there from you and the team. I appreciate that. Congressman Muser remains with us, of course. Dan Muser from Pennsylvania, who is there at today's rally. Congressman, obviously you heard my colleague reporting here, our NBC News team, that the suspect is believed to be about 20 years old and from your state, from Pennsylvania here, sir. Talk us through some reaction there and bring us back to tonight. You described being so close to somebody who was ultimately killed. I imagine there was a fear for your own safety.
Well, I think everybody was fearing some, or in some cases, quite a bit, right? When you're hearing rapid fire like that, and you see the president go down, but certainly when President Trump did get up and waved his fist in that he's on the rise, that changed the mood in a hurry. But there was still a lot of pandemonium, tears, and quite a bit of fear. Regarding the shooter, look, I got some information on him a little bit earlier. If it's the same person, he seems that he put out something earlier that was very threatening, that he was going to do something today. Again, if it was the same individual, whether there's mental illness there or where that level of hate comes from, and the idea that he thinks he would go in and do some good by assassinating our candidate for president and perhaps the future president and the former president is pretty sad. But I'll be honest with you, I'm glad when someone like that thinks that they can get away with something like that. That he did not, number one, but number two, paid the ultimate price. We need to deter such craziness. And on the same note, I will add, we need an environment of more of open discourse, less hyperbolizing, less accusations, and more conversations. Right? I mean, that's the responsibility, I think, of of those in an elected office, and hopefully this will be a catalyst for us to do that.
Congressman, still a lot of questions, obviously, and we want to be very clear about what we do and what we do not know. But some of those questions may be answered in just about 6 minutes when we hear from law enforcement at a news conference that is set to begin at 11:45 Eastern in Butler, Pennsylvania. We'll be bringing that to folks live. But, Congressman, before I let you go, any contact with anybody in the Trump orbit, the broader orbit, since this happened tonight in Butler?
Just anecdotal, nothing necessarily specific, but we do hear that the president is well. He's strong. He's fired up, as you can imagine. There's such a traumatic incident, but we're just happy he's okay, and we're going to see him in Milwaukee.
And do you believe Milwaukee will move forward as planned? We've been reporting out that obviously the former president, through his campaign, says he's looking forward to being there. Clearly, there may be some changes related to the content of some of the remarks, et cetera, given what has happened here. I wonder what your sense of that is.
Well, I agree. I mean, this is a very serious event, and hopefully we can find some good in it, if you will, or some opportunity to unite. And realize that we are all Americans, and we need to work towards common goals. But the president's a fighter. He's got great energy, and something tells me he's going to be quite present at his convention.
Congressman, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to talk through this with us. I appreciate it, and we will see you in Milwaukee, I'm sure. Thank you, sir. I want to bring in Garrett Hake now, who covers former President Trump. And Garrett, I'm struck by the congressman describing Mr. Trump there as a fighter, because there is that now iconic image being circulated by his allies of the former president. We just showed it here in our video with his fist in the air. You see him waving there. After this, in the video, he does a couple of fist pumps. This is one of those shots there, one of those images, so to speak, Garrett. This is becoming symbolic of the way that those close to the former president see him in this moment and see him moving forward in many ways.
Yeah, Hallie, I think that's right. I mean, it's always been a core element of his political brand, the idea that Donald Trump was a fighter. He likes to say that he will be fighting for the forgotten man. That was, his campaign theme back in 2016 and 2020 for a time. I had a Republican strategist not affiliated with the campaign who I was talking to earlier tonight who said, you can't buy a photo like that. I mean, this will become an iconic image in our politics. All of these pictures of Donald Trump from tonight, there are so many that are kind of already going to be seared into the minds of people who've been watching some of this coverage. The photos and the fact that it's Donald Trump himself who's defined much of what we know about tonight, I think, really, with that one post that he made on his Truth Social platform just before 9 p.m. It was he that confirmed or said that he had been shot, in fact, when at the time much of the early reporting had suggested that perhaps it was a ricochet or a piece of glass. But no, the former president said in that post, it was in fact a bullet that hit him in the upper ear, on his right ear. He said he could tell exactly what was going on. He could hear it as it was happening. He expressed in that same post condolences for the other victims, thank you for law enforcement. And interestingly enough, I was thinking in the context of the congressman's comments about, whether they had heard somebody else in the day who might have been making threats. At the time of that Truth Social post, the former president said nothing was known about the shooter. That just before 9 p.m. tonight. Now, who knows to what degree he would have been briefed on an investigation into his own assassination attempt at that point. But that's where we were a few hours ago. And Hallie, as we sit here now, we remain a bit in the dark about the former president's movements. We know only that he's left the Butler area. His campaign has, by rule, basically not been commenting really about this assassination attempt at all tonight, but are, I think, particularly and understandably guarding quite closely his movements at this hour. He had his plane with him there at the Pittsburgh airport, but we don't know whether he's going back to New Jersey, as had been the original plan, or perhaps to one of his other residences tonight. We do expect to see him on Monday in Milwaukee for one important piece of business, of course. He has to pick a vice president. He has to pick a running mate, and he has to do that by basically mid-afternoon Monday, or they're going to have to rework the convention. And I will say just one final thought again, as I was listening to your conversation with the congressman. The statements that we have from the RNC and from the Trump campaign thus far are basically the show must go on, that the convention will move forward on Monday. But the idea that a convention can be completely redone from the ground up is not totally a new phenomenon. Obviously, we saw the conventions rebuilt from scratch during COVID in 2020. And I remember the first convention I ever covered in 2008, a Republican convention, had to be completely reworked. One day of programming completely dropped to accommodate a hurricane halfway across the country. That it made it seem inappropriate to be holding convention-related activities at that time. And so there will be no rest in Milwaukee tonight, I suspect, for all the folks, some 50,000 ultimately, who will be there hoping to put on that event for the Republican Party that's now sort of rethinking quite a bit, I imagine.
Garrett, thank you. That tees us up for Vaughn Hilliard, who is in Milwaukee. And Vaughn, I want to preface this by saying in the next couple of minutes, we expect to see a news conference from Butler, Pennsylvania, perhaps a critical one, as we do think we're going to hear from both local and federal law enforcement officials about what happened at the rally, about the next steps moving forward, and about where this investigation stands. There are a lot of questions still on that front tonight as our team continues to report out details, including that multiple sources are telling our team that the suspect appears to be, who is now dead, the suspected shooter, 20 years old, just about, from the state of Pennsylvania. As that is happening, there is that split screen, of course, where you are in Milwaukee, as Garrett and I were just talking about, Vaughn.
Right, and there's also a question tonight exactly where the presumptive 2024 Republican nominee is headed. We know that he has left the Butler area. It was not intended initially for him to come directly to Milwaukee. The main primetime festivities, the convention formally opens inside of the arena behind me here on Monday, though the several thousand delegates that will be in attendance and will be formally nominating him on Monday here in Milwaukee, they are already in town. There was a reception this evening that was on the books being put on by Reince Priebus, the former RNC chair, who is from the Milwaukee area, is essentially serving as the host of this Republican National Convention. That reception was canceled here tonight. There are other meetings that are going to be taking place here around the greater Milwaukee area tomorrow. I'm told that those are proceeding as normal. There is no indication that the convention plans are changing in any way. I've talked to several delegates here tonight who suggested to me that this only intensifies the energy and the importance of the convention speech that Donald Trump will deliver in prime time on Thursday night. Garrett said it. He still has a vice presidential running mate to make the selection of. There is a lot on the line for Donald Trump in the next 4 months. There is a potential sentencing date still in Lower Manhattan that he could very well face. And I can only tell you, Hallie, over the last 9 years, you have covered this campaign so closely as well. The intensity on the ground among voters on the left, on the right, has only increased with each passing year. And this year, more than ever, the understanding of what is on the line in this rematch of Joe Biden and Donald Trump on November 5th, 2024 is very well understood. And when you see the thousands of folks that come out to Donald Trump's rallies in the heat of the summer, like it was today in Pennsylvania, or a couple weeks ago in Nevada when it was over 100 degrees, there is a passion and intensity among so many to have that individual return back into the White House. Today, we are less than 4 months from the presidential election, and we expect the former president of the United States and presumptive Republican nominee to be here in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention in less than 48 hours. Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in Milwaukee. Vaughn, thank you. I want to show you now the scene from Butler, Pennsylvania, where we are awaiting at any minute. You see the microphones there, the chairs set up, a news conference from federal, state, local officials on what has happened today. And you see it there in that just unprecedented banner on our screen. The former President Trump has been hurt in this apparent assassination attempt, a moment that is clearly reshaping this political campaign. The former president, he says, his campaign says, is fine. He is safe. Mr. Trump describing how he heard the bullet whizzing past his ear, that he was shot, that the bullet pierced his upper right ear. We've seen those images, too, of blood on his face. You see it there as we are now waiting for that news conference to begin. And if you're just joining us or have been watching for the last couple of hours, we want to give you a sense of the moments, what it was like when it happened and after there in Butler. Listen.
Dad, take a look at what happened.
guys here.
All guys here, move it to the stairs.
Stair, get ready. Stair, get ready. You ready?
And then as he moved his head to look at the chart up on the screen, that's when he got grazed in the ear. If he had not moved his head at that nick of time, it could have been a lot worse.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And so, and I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that people who, and we have more detail to come.
I'm shook. I'm definitely shook up, but I'm okay. Yeah, and Trump was talking, watching him. I heard pop, pop, pop. I thought it was like a cap gun. And my son's like, God, get down. And next thing you know, everybody around us was down. And then once we got down, we was up at the top of our bleacher. The men were yelling to all the snipers and all the cops to come over because he had shot a man and a woman in our bleacher.
The scene as it happened just after 6 o'clock Eastern time. Here we are pushing midnight on the East Coast, and we expect to get an update from law enforcement any minute. Evie Paporis, a former Secret Service agent, is with us now. We understand, Evie, that Secret Service will be briefing along with federal law enforcement, local law enforcement. Help us set the table for what we might expect to hear in the next couple of minutes.
So they're going to break down what they do know and then what they're willing to share. Obviously, this is an ongoing investigation. We're not going to get all the facts. It's likely they may share the name of the individual. They may not. It depends what they've done. Because think about it. You want to go and interview all the people that are connected to this person. You also want to make sure that there are no other individuals connected to this person in committing this crime, committing the assassination, that it was a network of people. Those are the things you want to look at. They're going to talk about where that person was positioned. Interestingly enough, it's how did that person get there? That's a big question that everybody is asking. Yes, it was outside the security perimeter, but how did that person get there? How did that person get access to the roof? These are all the different things people are trying to understand. And what protocols were put in place, and what are they going to do? So you're going to hear the what have we done so far? Where are we at now? And what are we going to do moving forward? Likely with the U.S. Secret Service, they're going to talk about their resources, how they're moving with protection as they're going forward. We're talking about the RNC. You've got other candidates coming in, especially if former President Trump is going to announce who his VP is. So the Secret Service isn't going to turn off. This is still going to go. And you're going to see more resources and more assets put into place. So it's going to be a breakdown of the investigation and of how things are moving forward when it comes protection-wise.
Evie, thank you. I'm going to ask you to stand by. We want to listen in now to this news conference that is happening in Butler, Pennsylvania. We're bringing it to you live here on this NBC News special report.
Are we ready?
Let's listen in.
Is everyone ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know if all the cameras are.
So my name is Kevin Rojek. That's R-O-J-E-K. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI Pittsburgh field office. The first thing I want to say is that the FBI stands with the people of Butler County in Western Pennsylvania, and our hearts go out to the victims of this heinous act which occurred today. This is our community, and I want to let the public know that the FBI has deployed a number of our resources, including investigative agents, our evidence response team, bomb technicians, and we have additional resources coming from other field offices, as well as from FBI headquarters, including our evidence response from Quantico, Virginia. We have intelligence analysts as well, working from our field office in Pittsburgh, working feverishly to attempt to identify the individual who did this and any motives behind why this was done. Right now, we need the public's help. Anyone who was on scene, who saw anything, who identified any information, please report that to the FBI using either the phone number 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at fbi.gov/Butler. This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well. Again, at this time, we are not prepared to identify who the shooter is. We are close to that identification, and as soon as we are 100% confident in who that individual is, we will share it with the press. With that being said, also, we do not currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify what that motive was. At this time, I'm going to turn over the podium to Colonel Chris Paris from the Pennsylvania State Police.
Thank you very much. My name is Colonel Chris Paris, P-A-R-I-S, Commissioner of Pennsylvania State Police. I would just like to say that the State Police have been in regular contact with the Governor's office, and the full support and assets of the entire agency are behind the FBI and our other federal and municipal partners to assist with this investigation. The thoughts and prayers of the Pennsylvania State Police are likewise with the victims of this terrible act. We are prepared to support this investigation in any way, shape, or form, and we stand ready to participate in a full, fair, and competent and thorough investigation. To give you an operational rundown, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, is behind me, and he will discuss the operational portion that's being conducted by the Pennsylvania State Police. Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
Good evening. So let me describe for you a little bit about the scene that we have over there. As you know, there was a grandstand, a very large area, a lot of people there when this all unfolded. The former president had come out and begun to speak shortly after 6 o'clock this evening. And within about 10 to 15 minutes, a number of sounds were heard, and it became apparent that shots were being fired in that direction. It was a chaotic scene. Law enforcement, I believe, acted heroically, quickly identifying and neutralizing the threat, as well as responding to assist the various victims. PSP had a significant presence on the scene along with all of our federal partners at the time of the shooting. We have since enhanced that presence significantly, bringing in resources from all over the Commonwealth to ensure that we have a speedy, thorough investigation. We are working very closely with the FBI as we work through this. As you can imagine, because of the variety of crimes that have been committed, some are under federal jurisdiction, some are under state jurisdiction. And so, we're working through all of that, not an issue at all. We work seamlessly. But the FBI has maintained the lead on the attempted assassination. PSP will take the lead on the homicide and the shootings of the other individuals in the grandstand area. And so there are a lot of witnesses to be interviewed, a lot of things to be processed. There were some complicators that hopefully the next time we speak we can describe for you, but some complicators that slowed down some of the processing and the positive identification of the shooter. But know that at this time we have no reason to believe that there is any other existing threat out there. We are doing everything we can to make sure that this is thoroughly investigated, and that if there is any information developed that anyone else was involved, that between PSP and the FBI, that will very quickly be followed up on. So I think at this time we would open it up to questions from all of you.
Was this a lone wolf attack?
Again, I think it's too early to say that. We have one shooter tentatively identified, but we're not stopping there. We're following up on a lot of information. It will be some time until we can conclusively say or answer that question, I think.
How long do you think that gunman was hiding up there? I mean, we saw the snipers up there, you know, as the crowds were kind of rolling in and looked like they had a pretty good viewpoint to check everyone out. So how long did that guy been up there?
Again, that'll all be part of the investigation, but
Can you come up to the mic, please?
that will all be part of the investigation. But I can tell you that preliminarily it appears everything unfolded very quickly. So, you know, again, we'll have more information on that, but it's just too early to start definitively saying this happened at this exact time.
But it wasn't like he's inside the security perimeter, right? That building he's on is outside of it?
That's correct.
How far outside of it was it?
We'll have that information for you. It was some distance outside of the
Colonel,
security
can you
perimeter.
comment on reports that there were people who saw someone on the roof and tried to alert authorities?
We're following up on those. I will tell you that I am aware of those, and I am aware that law enforcement had responded to a number of reports of suspicious activity. The specific response to this will be all part of the after action, but yes, law enforcement was responding to check on several suspicious occurrences.
What were the other suspicious occurrences?
That'll all be part of the investigation.
So you said that you're close to identifying the shooter. Could you at least confirm that he is from Butler County, Pennsylvania? Is there anything else? Did he have any affiliation with that company, do you know?
So again, we're not prepared at this time to provide the identity of the potential shooter. We're in the process of doing the confirmation, and once we have the confirmation, we'll release the name officially to the press. But at this time, we can't give any further information on the potential shooter.
Or his family, or what else needs to be done?
No, it's a matter of doing biometric confirmations. So there was no identification on the individual, as an example. So you know, we're looking at photographs right now, and we're trying to run his DNA and get biometric confirmation on.
Would you be able to comment just what police found left behind? Like any possible devices? Did you find any extra guns? Just anything else you'd be willing to comment?
Not at this time. No, we're still in the process of an active investigation. So we'd like to reserve releasing any information like that until we have more facts.
Today, is there any heightened threat level, credible threat level that you guys were aware of more so than what is typical for an event like this?
From the FBI's perspective, no. We did not have any specific threat information related to this event.
Can I ask, you talked about how it happened so quickly, and we know that there is at least 2 casualties, including the gunman at this point, that we're aware of. It could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely.
Are you able to comment more about that and how it was taken care of so quickly?
So I think the credit goes to not only the Secret Service, who was on site, but also the state and local partners who were there on site and were able to react immediately when the incident occurred.
Do you know how many officers fired their weapons?
I do not.
I understand that it's very early and there's still going to be a lot of questions, but I mean, is this a failure of security?
Really, at this point, we're not going to make that assessment. There's an active investigation. A lot of things need to occur investigatively to make those determinations of what, if any, failures there were. So we can't comment on that at this time.
So you can't say if Secret Service had checked those buildings or we're keeping a close eye or?
Really have to defer to Secret Service for those questions.
Was there any law enforcement at the AGR property prior to the event? Like, were there police at that location at any point during the event?
Are you saying the location where the shooter was located?
Yes.
I don't have any information on that. You'd have to defer to Secret Service.
When do you think you will release? When will the name of the shooter be released? I mean, any inkling of when that might happen, tomorrow or?
So that'll be as soon as we've confirmed 100%, we're willing to release that. So if we have, you know, as far as the contact information for the press, we should be able to do that within the next few hours, I imagine.
I'm sorry, sir. There was a vehicle being checked not far from here. We've also heard of a possible related scene in Bethel Park. Is there anything you can tell us tonight about other areas where law enforcement may be searching in relation to this event?
Again, right now we're tracking down all leads and doing all interviews and tracking anything that we can regarding suspicious locations, vehicles, locations, interviewing individuals. So it's all related to this event, but I can't confirm or deny anything that's going on beyond that.
Can you tell us about the weapon that the shooter used?
As far as the details of the weapon?
Yeah, what kind of a rifle was that?
Do you want to comment on that?
What did he use?
No, until it's confirmed, we comment on it. Okay, yet until we have the confirmation of who the shooter is, and we'll release that as part of the investigative details later.
You said that you guys are deploying extra resources, and one of the things that you said was bomb technicians. So is this standard procedure, or do you have reason to believe that there are bombs somewhere in Butler County? I just want to, can you just walk us through that?
It's primarily standard procedure of any suspicious packages. In this case, there was identification of suspicious packages around where the shooter was, and so we deployed, in an abundance of caution, bomb assets to make sure that those were cleared for investigators to move safely in the area. We're still working on, it's still an active crime scene, so I'm not going to say that the scene is 100% clear at this time.
Why are there any Secret Service agents here right now for this press conference?
So Secret Service wasn't available for the press conference at this time.
I understand what packages are you talking about? You're talking about packages, what, just suspicious packages like what? You're the shooter.
Really anything. I don't have specifics on what they were looking at, but you know, there's people in the crowd will leave bags as they're fleeing the scene like this. So any suspicious packages we have to treat as it may be an explosive device.
And then how quickly, this was, I guess, the Secret Service, which we're not here to talk about, I guess, but when you guys jumped into action, all law enforcement, and were able to take down that shooter, how quickly did everybody jump in, and who ended up taking him out?
So it was immediate, and we're still trying to figure that out. So we'll wait till we have more definitive information regarding that investigatively.
What about the person in the crowd? Do you have any information about how they were killed?
My understanding was it was from the shooter, but again, those will be details that are released later.
Do you search homes or apartments as a part of your method of identifying the individual?
So if that's where the leads take us, absolutely.
Was Donald Trump hit with a bullet, do you know for sure, or was it potentially something else that could have?
I don't have that specific information as far as the injuries to the former president.
I understand you're not releasing the suspect's identification right now, but as you know, is this person known to you guys? Is he somebody that you guys have been looking at due to threats he's possibly made online, et cetera, et cetera?
Again, the information that we currently have, we're looking at that obviously very intently, and as we know that information, we'll release that as well. So we'll need to plan another time for a follow-up press conference. We're looking at all investigative leads and everything from, and that's why we asked the public, because I'm sure there'll be cell phone video, there'll be all kinds of information that we'll use to fully flesh out exactly what happened here.
I know you're saying you can't say what type of gun it is, but do you know how many shots were fired?
I don't.
And
I don't have that information as far as that. That'll come out in the investigation as well.
Is there an identification tonight on the other victims?
As far as the civilians,
civilians that were injured and killed.
Yeah.
So we do have identification on those. We're not prepared to release it at this time. We have notified a number of family members, but they have not had an opportunity to notify extended family and things. I would confirm for you that we did have one individual killed, and I know I heard somebody say about 2 victims. There were 3 in total besides the former president. So 2 critically wounded, 1 killed.
At this point, do you know if they were sitting near each other and where in relation to the former president were they?
I don't have their exact seating by individual. Again, that'll all be part of the investigation, but their shots were scattered somewhat, and so they weren't just into one particular location.
you're saying just one fatality as of right now?
Yes.
The shooter and one fatality.
The shooter plus 1 fatality.
Okay.
So there was one victim of the shooter who was killed, and then the shooter was killed.
And then 2 in critical.
Yes, ma'am.
Witnesses say they saw a semi-automatic rifle was used by the shooter. Can you share any more details of this? That's what
I've heard those reports as well, and again, we do have a good idea of what the weapon was, but again, that's all part of the ongoing investigation. And I'm not trying to be cagey about that. You know, when the SAC talked about the need to be very methodical and to be cautious with that scene, we are doing just that. We don't want anybody else getting hurt, and candidly, there are some concerns that we'll be able to talk more about later on about just what those concerns are and continue to be.
Why would you have to talk to the shooter's family yet?
That's all part of the investigation.
After the event, there were a lot of really angry people. Are you monitoring? Have there been any threats in response to this? Are you worried? Have there been any specific threats?
That's certainly a concern, and you know, we're monitoring that whole situation. I mentioned that, you know, we're bringing a lot of assets to bear, and so like the FBI utilizing their analysts, we also have the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center. We will utilize the resources of our intelligence division and the Criminal Intelligence Center to be able to monitor for concerns about any threats, regardless of the side of the issue or the political spectrum. We want to make sure that we try and avoid any further violence.
But no, nothing specific so far?
No, sir.
Without identifying them by name, can you say anything about the other folks who were injured or killed? Were they adults, men, male, female, anything at all?
They were adults, and they're male.
All three?
Yes.
How difficult of a day is this for your department, though, or all your departments, to go talk to these family members, including the civilians who were gunned down while they just went to a rally and try and, you know, celebrate against the upcoming election? What are those conversations like, and how do you kind of get through that?
We have trained investigators, and we're partnered hand in hand with the FBI, again, because we've got some federal violations, some state violations, and so our investigators are going out and methodically. We have a large team of investigators that are going out, dividing up these interviews and trying to conduct them as quickly as possible, and then there will be follow-ups. You know, with the FBI asking for people to call in tips, I have no doubt that we will receive a lot of additional information that will also require follow-up. But again, we're working very well together, and it's only a short matter of time until we get through all of those interviews.
Colonel, from your experience, how close a call was it for President Trump?
There were no police hit with bullets.
From your experience, how close a call was it for President Trump?
I'm not going to speculate or comment on that.
Have any of you talked to the president? Did any of you have any kind of reaction or anything?
No. No.
Which law enforcement agencies were tasked with securing this particular rally outside of the United States Secret Service?
Well, Secret Service always has the lead on securing something like this, but then they work very closely. And I hate to use the word routine, but it is a fairly routine matter for all of our agencies to work jointly with the Secret Service. And it really depends on the venue, on what information is out there, what number of resources are devoted to it, and we work with them to provide whatever is requested by the Secret Service, but they're the lead in that security.
Was there anything about this venue that made it particularly difficult to secure?
You know, I would defer to the Secret Service to answer that. They would have done the initial assessment.
Was the rooftop part of what was being secured? Was the rooftop, given its proximity to the event, part of that process?
It's my understanding that was outside of the perimeter.
Did this shooter have any previous criminal history?
We're not going to comment on anything about the
Did
shooter.
any agency deny Trump's team extra security? Any of the agencies that are up there?
Not that I'm aware of.
If Trump had been the nominee already, would he have had additional security for this event?
There again, Secret Service has the lead, and I'm not going to comment or speculate on what may or may not be provided at any given point, depending on their status as a candidate. What I will tell you is that, in my experience, the Secret Service does an excellent job of maintaining security on protectees. They're very cautious. They don't hesitate to ask for resources, and candidly, we don't hesitate to supply those resources.
Deputy Colonel, you're asking for the public's help. Can can you elaborate and be more specific about what you really like to see from the public? If it's videos, photos, personal accounts?
I think the videos and photos would be very helpful, and I think that once the shooter is identified, anyone that has specific information on that shooter, that would be very helpful as well to help us assess motive. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are absolutely not taking for granted that this was a lone wolf attack, and so we would be looking for any additional information that might point us toward anybody else that may have had a hand in this.
Sir, at this point, what is the main focus of the investigation? What's the most important thing for you right now, a few hours?
Well, there's not any one single focus. I mean, certainly the immediate focus was life safety, getting the former president out of there and to care, getting care to the other victims, and trying to secure the scene as quickly as possible. It shifted then from a life safety priority to then an investigative priority. And so I guess if I had to point to where we are right now, the single greatest priority would be to identifying a motive and whether there was anyone else involved.
We're just beginning the political season. Are you guys concerned with all of these rallies that happen and how they're set up? Is this going to change maybe the venues?
Again, I would refer you to the Secret Service in terms of what they work out with the campaigns. We will continue to supply resources, as I'm sure the FBI will, and local partners as well.
When this was announced, it was, there was quite a few days of a heads up that people were getting ready to come to this Trump rally. From a law enforcement perspective, when you announce a big event like this, all that time in advance and the week out, does it give people more time to plan something like this?
Well, I suppose, but there's a balance, I would think, that any of the campaigns on either side try to weigh. I mean, the point of them announcing it, I suspect, is because they want the crowd, and so it's not up to us in law enforcement to tell them when they should announce or how they should announce or how they should conduct it. We offer our best advice, again, working hand in hand with the Secret Service, offer our best advice of how best to secure and protect that venue.
Sir, considering how many people were there, and you have packed in there, and you have somebody at an elevated position with potentially a high-powered rifle, how lucky is it that we were only talking about a couple of victims, as sad and tragic as that is?
Well, we're certainly grateful that we don't have even more victims. And again, in terms of how this could have occurred, that will be part of this after-action report and an investigation that occurs so that we can hopefully ensure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Has an autopsy been conducted yet, or is it scheduled?
It has not been conducted yet.
Do you have an estimate on how many people were at the rally?
I do not.
If somebody has some video of their photos, where should they send it?
So we have the 1-800 call FBI if you have audio tips, and then we set up a specific tip line for audio and video, and that's fbi.gov/Butler.
And they should send you just like any video?
Anything that anyone has that is related to this incident that they think may be of assistance investigatively, we'll take anything and we'll analyze it, and we'll make the determination if it's of investigative value. Go ahead.
So from what you've been briefed on, it sounds like law enforcement only knew he was up there until shots were fired. Is that what you're hearing?
So that is the assessment at this time.
So are you surprised that a sniper was able to fire off a handful of shots at the former president? I mean,
again, we're still working through the security apparatus that the Secret Service had in place, what potentially happened. There's going to be a long investigation into exactly what took place and how the individual was able to get access to the location, what type of weapon he had. All that is really days, weeks, and months of investigation.
He was able to get off like 4 or 5 shots.
It is surprising, but again, to get all the details of that will come out later in investigation.
Going back to the perimeter of this building, I think it's going to be really difficult for people to understand that this building with a very high vantage point, some 100 meters away from where this is happening, isn't part of that perimeter. What goes into that conversation over what is in and out and why wouldn't that be?
Again, the Secret Service really needs to answer that question. They conduct the initial site survey. They do the initial security assessments. and determine where the different security locations should be, and they're the ones who are in charge of securing the scene. We, along with other state and local assets, are there to support the Secret Service and their mission.
How many troopers and agents were at the rally, obviously before the shooting, and how is that number determined, and should perhaps there have been more?
So I don't have the specific numbers. I doubt you do as well.
No, I can speak just for PSP. We had physically on site there probably 30 to 40 members of PSP, but we also have additional resources in the area. We utilize aviation, for example, and a variety of other resources, dogs to sweep beforehand that really aren't counted in that. And again, the number is driven by what the request is from the Secret Service. You know, just in their defense, I mean, what I would want to say is it is incredibly difficult to have a venue open to the public and to secure that against any possible threat, against a very determined attacker. That's a huge lift to try and do it. And, you know, again, the investigation will really give us an opportunity to take a look at where any failures occurred and what can be done better in the future.
Lieutenant Colonel Bivens, do you know when another briefing might be held?
We don't have one scheduled, but I would tell you we will let you know and give you plenty of notice. Certainly, as soon as additional things develop that would be noteworthy or of interest to you, we'll get that scheduled and have another with you.
Locally, what can residents, businesses expect to happen with the investigation over the next couple of days? What's going to be going on there that people?
Well, again, the interviews will all be occurring, and so they may see law enforcement in their communities. People came from a wide area to come to this rally, I'm told. So, you know, there's going to be law enforcement fanning out, and as additional calls, photos, videos come in, you know, those additional interviews will result in law enforcement being out in the community conducting those interviews. But otherwise, they really shouldn't see any other significant impact in the community.
Would you confirm whether it's a male or female, the homicide, the bystander who died?
It's a male.
A male?
Yes.
Now, I'm from a European outlet from Poland, and I'm already getting text messages from, you know, back home, and people are asking, how could this happen? What's going on in America? I know that it's a philosophical question, but how could you talk to the people outside the United States about what happened here in Butler?
Well, again, what I would say is a tragic incident that occurred. We're not in a position to start second-guessing how or why or anything else at this point. Just know that it will be thoroughly investigated. If there is anyone to prosecute, that will be done, and we'll move forward. But I don't have a good answer for you.
We'll just take one last question.
I know that PSP said that you guys were not aware of any additional requests from the Trump team for security. What about the FBI? Was there an additional request for additional security from the Trump team, and was that denied in any way, shape, or form?
No. No, there was no additional request for security that was ever denied by the FBI.
What does the FBI do in these events? Like, what is your role?
So we showed up after the fact. We were monitoring the event, but it was once the incident occurred that we come and we take the primary jurisdiction for the investigation. Thank you. We'll, as we have additional information, we'll provide it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have been listening to that midnight briefing now after what the FBI describes as an assassination attempt against former President Trump at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, the location of that news conference you just watched, 12:22 Eastern time at this point. No identification of the suspected shooter. Now, officials said they were not prepared to ID that person, that this man, as they said, had no ID on him. They're still running biometrics, dealing with DNA. There's also no information on a motive at this point either. I want to bring in our investigative correspondent, Tom Winter. There were, Tom, some allusions to some complications or some complicators, in their words, that perhaps slowed down some of the process. Allusions to reports of suspicious activity as well. Help us understand where this investigation goes, with a lot of the focus now on the Secret Service, the security of the perimeter in place, with our understanding that the Secret Service was not at this briefing tonight because they weren't able to accommodate that, Tom.
That's right, Hallie. So I'm going to deal with the security, the Secret Service component, what may have happened in just a second. To the suspect specifically, a couple of different factors. First off, you have an incident like this, a shooting with a crowd, different people shot, then that would be a chaotic scene, a difficult scene, no matter what. Add in the fact that this is the former president of the United States and the presumptive Republican nominee, and you can only imagine the challenges that occurred immediately following the incident that we're about to watch right here on our screen. So that's the first thing. Second thing, with respect to the suspect, yes, they do have a tentative identification. As you and I spoke before this press conference, that individual is a male, approximately 20 years old, from Pennsylvania. There's a very active law enforcement work being done right now. He did not have an identification on him. And so what they want to do for sure is to find a way to be able to match either fingerprints or some sort of DNA and have the ability to make sure with 100% certainty that this person is the person who shot at Donald Trump today, and what they describe very clearly as an assassination attempt. That's a significant thing from the FBI to describe the investigation that way. We've heard no reports that they're looking for anybody else and no reports that anybody else might be involved. But of course, it's still an ongoing investigation. As far as the security is concerned, we had a map up earlier that showed where this shooting occurred, and it's to the right. Now you're looking at it here. If you were former President Trump looking out at the crowd, it was off to his right where this occurred. You can see it's approximately 140, 150 yards away. And on the left-hand side there, the location of the suspected gunman's body, that's where this individual, a male, was apparently set up and firing. That's a pretty long distance for somebody to fire with that level of accuracy towards the former president. And you can see on the right-hand side approximately where Trump was located when this gunman started firing. There is some additional video we're in the process of getting into our system and being able to show you, I believe, that is going to show the counter sniper teams. So these are teams that are set up to be able to look out at the crowd and surrounding area and perhaps fire upon anybody, which is what apparently happened here, that may pose a threat. The big question, Hallie, and this photograph doesn't show it because this is a Google Earth snapshot at a moment in time. It was not something that was taken today. There were obviously stands that were set up. There was obviously all sorts of apparatus in place as far as the security perimeter of the Secret Service. The question that people are going to have, it's going to be a very serious question, is how could somebody have line of sight from a distance of approximately 150 yards towards the former president of the United States, the presumptive Republican nominee, and how could that person be on that roof and not be spotted in advance? And as we heard from law enforcement officials at that press conference, they did say that they did get some witness reports that law enforcement had been directed towards that location, and they were trying to see if, in fact, that was true, if people actually did report that at the time. The Pennsylvania State Police would have been there to work with the United States Secret Service, but the United States Secret Service doesn't have press representation or folks on the ground. They've got another concern. They've got a candidate who's set to attend the Republican National Convention in approximately a day-ish from now, has to make a VP pick who needs to get a Secret Service detail. So it'd be a chaotic time, period. And now you're in a situation where you've got to up your protective capabilities involving the former president to a level that would put him on par with being the president of the United States. You can only imagine. And as our colleague Kelly O'Donnell pointed out in reporting back in June, in fact, they had ramped up security on Trump, given the fact that he was the presumptive nominee and a former president. And we all know the political temperature in this country and how fractured this country is politically. So when you mix that all together, the threat environment that we've been talking about for weeks and months, this was a situation that I think a lot of folks in law enforcement feared. But having noted that, it's something that the Secret Service will certainly have to answer to as to how somebody was able to get up on top of a roof that close with what appears to be line of sight. But we'll get more details once we can figure out where those stands were. And of course, once more imagery comes in, that's something the FBI is really hoping for here. I remember when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, the FBI put out a phone number, and they also set up a website for people to send stuff. They were flummoxed that the phones were not ringing. And then all of a sudden they realized they were getting inundated with videos that people had, photographs that people had. Look at all the smartphones just in that picture. There's 6, 7, 8 of them. And so it was video that came out of that really helped with their investigation. Here, they appear to know who the suspect is, Hallie, but it would really help them out from a standpoint of when did he get up on the roof, certainly identify if anybody helped him get up on the roof, but when did he get up on the roof, what was noticed and when, and what went down and when, and that'll all be part of the investigation. And obviously significant questions, and as I know, in D.C. where you are, there are serious questions being asked of Congress tonight, and it appears that perhaps the Secret Service will be in front of lawmakers to answer questions about what went on today. But it sure appears, based on some photographs and the incident that we had, is that this was a very serious assassination attempt. That's how it's being described to myself and my colleagues by those in law enforcement. Came very close today to a real tragedy on top of, obviously, the person who was there who died.
Tom Winter, thank you. And to your point, the Speaker of the House calling now for that congressional investigation. I want to quickly bring in Evie Pompouris, a former Secret Service agent. And Evie, I'm curious, with your background, with your expertise, what did you hear in that news conference, in that briefing that is notable to you? What perked your ears up?
There are a couple of different components here. So a lot of questions are being asked of the FBI of things that really the Secret Service does. And I think we will hear from the Secret Service, but traditionally they have a one-voice policy. I'm not surprised that a representative wasn't there. They maybe didn't have the manpower or the person available, but I do think they're going to want to get their information, kind of get that information together, and then have that one voice come out to talk about what happened. And when you look at protection, there are elements that go into it. So there were many things that PSP was saying, that the FBI was saying, that are correct. U.S. Secret Service is the lead agency. So meaning you have this rally, Secret Service comes in advance, they have an advance team, they go to the site, and they typically assign an agent to look around and say, what do I need? What do I need here to secure this? What kind of manpower do I need? What am I going to ask for? And that's where that pre-security planning comes in. And you decide, I'm going to ask for X amount of people, snipers, tactical teams. I'm also even going to, even the stage, the way it's designed, egress points and ingress points. In addition to how am I going to get people out? A lot of people, everyone's so focused on the president, and we have been in these hours that we've been reporting. The crowd is also a responsibility you have to take in. The president is the target. He's the threat. So wherever he goes, the threat goes. And so when he's at a rally like this, you have to also think of all those people there. And we've seen this today where we have one person who was killed, and we have, I believe it's 2 people in critical condition or 2 people that are injured. So when you put your security plan in place, you have to think of all these elements. Now, from an investigative standpoint, everybody is cautious. FBI is cautious. PSP is cautious as what information to release. They are doing their due diligence. It is a little bit interesting to me that the individual didn't have his ID on it. Normally, what we see historically, people who do things like this, they want to be known. They want to be identified right away. So for whatever reason, this person didn't have their identification. The other thing that I caught is PSP was talking about how they were a little bit slow in doing the investigation, that they had certain obstacles in place. And he talked about packages or things being left behind, but he didn't elaborate when he said that. So when I hear that, I'm thinking, did the shooter perhaps place certain bags or packages around the area where he was engaging? Did that make it difficult for them to access the area as to where he was? Or are they talking about things left behind by people in the stands, or both? right? And here comes a question. As far as, you know, I would hear a lot of the question being asked about that building, that area. Why was that area not secured? You lock down the inner perimeter, right? Wherever that strong presence is. Everything outside, you don't typically clean those areas, meaning you're not going to run typically dogs or anything like that. You may have some police presence. You may have some rovers in the area. Now, from what we know, again, it's not been confirmed. When you're looking at the assets as far as line of sight issues, it's the first thing. I've been a site agent, and this is what this is called. When you're a site agent, you go out and do this in advance. And one of the big things you look at is line of sight. You actually get up, you physically stand on that stage or where the president's going to be standing, and you pretend, I'm POTUS. What can I see? Who can see me? And you actually look around and you look for those vulnerabilities. If I am standing here and I'm the president, who can't see me? And then you focus on, how do I create an obstacle? How do I create an obstruction? I've gone even to the extent where you use concealment, even using landscape or bushes or trees, things that you can put into place to conceal the president.
Evie, thank you very much. Want to let folks know where things stand now at just after midnight here on the East Coast. Now just over 6 hours, give or take, since former President Donald Trump was shot and injured in an assassination attempt during his campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The Secret Service says the president is safe and that the shooter is dead. Afterwards, we've seen former President Trump already posting on his online platform that he was hit with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he felt it ripping through his skin. Moments ago, in that news conference we carried live here on NBC News, we heard from law enforcement officials on the status of the investigation. Watch.
This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well.
Still so many questions tonight, but I want to play out for a minute the video of what we heard and saw in the seconds after former President Trump started speaking at his rally as the shooting happened. Watch this.
A little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare. Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready. You ready? Shooter's down. Shooter's down. Are we good? Shooter's down. Shooter's down. Are we good to move? Shooter's down. We're good to move. We're clear. Let's move. Let's move. We're clear. Come on. Let me get my shoes. Got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. My shoes down. Get the shoe. Watch out.
Wait.
You saw that fist pump there just before. The former president was escorted very quickly into that motorcade, rushed away from that scene and to a local medical facility, we understand, for treatment. Here is what we know right now. This alleged gunman fired a weapon from a roof outside the perimeter of the rally. So if you look at this, you can see this person was outside that Secret Service security area. This alleged shooter, apparently a male in his 20s, is dead, as is a spectator, somebody who was attending the rally. That person killed, as were 2 others. We understand that President Biden has spoken with Mr. Trump. We should note that President Biden, even during that very late-night news conference, returned back to the White House from where he'd been staying in Delaware. You saw him getting off of Air Force One earlier this evening. President Biden addressing the nation and condemning the violence. I want to go to Dasha Burns, who is reporting from the rally when this happened. She is there still in Butler, just outside the site, Dasha, as things have moved obviously extremely quickly tonight.
Extremely quickly, Hallie, and we are still waiting to confirm exactly the whereabouts of the former president. I do have a little bit of new reporting, though, from myself and our colleague Olympia Saunier. A campaign source pointed us to a GoFundMe page that was authorized by former President Trump, organized by Meredith O'Rourke, the campaign's finance director. The description on the page says that President Donald Trump has authorized this account as a place for donations to the supporters and families wounded or killed in today's brutal and horrific assassination attempts. All donations will be directed to these proud Americans as they grieve and recover. May God bless and unite our nation. So that FundMe page authorized by the former president. Of course, we do know that one person at the rally was killed. Earlier today, Hallie, as I was in this parking lot talking to witnesses, sharing, exchanging our own stories, I met a gentleman who was right next to that man who was killed at the rally. He told me about that experience. Take a listen to this interview we did earlier. That is where I ran into a man named Joseph, and I want to introduce him to you now. And as we just learned, Joseph, you weren't listening to the program here, but Lester Holt, NBC News, just reporting that one of the attendees has deceased, has died from injuries as a result of the shooting. Joseph, you told me off camera that you may have witnessed this, and I'm so sorry to be talking to you in this tragic moment, but can you describe what it is that you saw?
I was attending the rally. I was in the set of bleachers, the very far left of the podium where President Trump was speaking. I was there with friends. I heard several gunshots. The man beside me suffered a gunshot wound to the head, was instantly killed. Fell to the bottom of the bleachers. Another woman looked like she got hit in the forearm or hand. And then at that point in time, it was rather chaotic at that point because half the people were looking because they thought it was fireworks. I knew it was gunshots right away. My friend, he hit the deck. I was kind of looking around just trying to see where the shots were coming from. It seemed to me like the shots were coming from behind the bleachers. It seemed to me the man got hit in the head from behind. He was killed instantly as far as I could tell. And at that point, state police and a SWAT team, started evacuating the bleachers, and then I helped carry the man out of the bleachers to a tent that was behind.
And Hallie, as reporters, so many of us have unfortunately covered shootings in the past, but typically we are running to the scene in the aftermath, talking to people in the aftermath. Rarely, certainly never for me, are we present in that moment. And I'll tell you, our team was there. We heard those popping sounds that we initially, like so many others we talked to today, thought might have been fireworks. We took cover. We experienced with that crowd going from, this is a typical rally, the former president is just starting to speak, we're preparing to see what kind of news he might make, to suddenly having to take cover, confusion, chaos, not quite understanding what's going on, to then hearing the cheers from the crowd as the former president, in that now iconic image, raised his fist up into the air. We got back up in front of a camera, started to report, and then everyone was evacuated by security at the rally and looked to one another to try to come to terms with and reckon with what just transpired, as now we are getting more of the details of what exactly we witnessed, Hallie.
Dasha Burns, thank you very much. I want to go now to Garrett Haake because, Garrett, in just the last couple of seconds, we have heard now in an online post from one of the close aides who frequently travels with former President Trump, posting a video that appears to be perhaps from tonight, we believe. She says, strong and resilient. He will never stop fighting for America. And if it is the case that this is from tonight, it would be the first glimpse of the former president since the moments that we've been showing repeatedly here on this NBC News special report, that attempted assassination, as the FBI describes it, in Butler, Pennsylvania.
That's right, Hallie. I'm looking at the video now. We'll hope to have it on your screen shortly from Margot Martin, who's a deputy communications director for the Trump campaign and someone who is almost always on the road with former President Trump when he travels for the campaign. It shows the former president surrounded by what appear to be Secret Service agents. They're not campaign aides that I recognize, coming down the steps of his plane late tonight, it appears. He had been scheduled to travel back to New Jersey, to Bedminster, his golf club there, and spend the night and the day there, at least some of the day there tomorrow, before heading to Milwaukee for the RNC. The campaign is not confirming exactly where he is or where he's staying tonight, or indeed where this video was shot. But again, just from having covered the campaign for as long as I have, Margot Martin, along with Dan Scavino, a name who many of our viewers might be familiar with, are two of these Trump aides who are almost always with the former president, almost always with their cell phones out, taking pictures and shooting video that often ends up on his social media feeds or their own. But we do see the former president tonight sort of slowly making his way down the air stairs off the back of his plane that we knew he did take with him tonight, as we see it now on our screen. The plane he did take with him tonight to Pittsburgh, and that we expected him to take back tonight at some point before all of this happened to New Jersey. But the first footage of Donald Trump anywhere after we saw him rushed into that motorcade in Butler, Pennsylvania, about 6 hours ago now.
All of those appropriate caveats noted, and I am told, in fact, Garrett, just moments ago, that in fact that was taken tonight, just recently. Garrett Haake, thank you very much. Again, the first look of the former president walking off the plane, as Garrett notes, under his own power there, giving a wave to the folks who have gathered nearby. I want to go to Kelly O'Donnell now, our senior White House correspondent, because we've also seen, Kelly, President Biden deplane as he has made his way back to Washington tonight. And as we have some of these questions now about the investigation moving forward, worth noting that the president is set to be briefed tomorrow by his top aides. He's obviously already heard from them tonight about what has happened.
And in just the last couple of minutes, the president's motorcade has returned back here to the White House. So he is now back at the official residence, having traveled from his Rehoboth Beach, Delaware home in the last hour or so, and then traveling by motorcade from Joint Base Andrews to the White House. So the president is now back here, choosing to come back to Washington after these events involving the former president. He spoke with him by phone. They made that personal connection earlier tonight. And aides have not described what the nature of the contact was, but the president himself had earlier said that he wanted to reach former President Trump and connect with him directly. They have done that now. The president has been briefed by a number of officials through the evening, and by being back at the White House tomorrow, he can do those in person if that's the way it unfolds, but he can certainly have additional updates from, for example, the FBI director, the Secret Service director, and so forth, some of whom would be in Washington, others elsewhere, and they do the video conferences. So what a long and difficult day it has been. And now we see with this new video posted by Margot Martin, the former president is moving under his own power, heading to wherever he will spend the night, and the current president is now back and in the White House. Hallie?
Kelly, thank you very much. I want to go back to Evie Poumpouras, that former Secret Service agent who is joining us now, who's been with us through this coverage. And Evie, there is obviously a critical couple of days to come, several months to come, clearly, after this historic night in American politics. It is reverberating around the world. We know that the Republican National Convention is set to kick off in less than 48 hours on Monday in Milwaukee. The question, of course, becoming what changes on the security posture there? What would you expect based on your experience with the agency moving forward?
I expect security to go up everywhere, not just for the RNC, but for all protectees. Here's the concern now: copycats. When something like this happens, first of all, this rarely happens. The last time we saw an assassination attempt like this was Ronald Reagan. That was decades ago. So now here we are where this has happened. The issue and concern with copycats is when someone sees this and they see that it can be done, other bad actors or people who are thinking about something like this will say, oh, if this person can do it, perhaps I can. So now there's that concern. How many other people are going to try to do something like this? So you're going to have a lot more security at the RNC. And look, at the RNC, it's not just the president. You have so many other individuals there who have their own protection. It might not be Secret Service protection, but it can be representatives, other officials. So you've got a lot of people in that area. Now, the one thing I will say with the RNC is it is a closed, confined space. Whenever you do advances or whenever you do open rallies, and I've done them, they are extremely stressful because you're out in the open. There's only so much you can control. And as much manpower as you request, there are variables outside of your hands. Now, at the RNC or anytime you do a closed, confined area, it's closed, you set up your magnetometers, you set up your perimeter, and now you know everybody who's coming in is clean. You don't have that open air exposure, those line of sight issues, but you're definitely going to see a ramp up in security. Secret Service also had their hands full now. Not only is this a campaign year, which is already super stressful, super busy. Everybody is tapped out. Everybody is working around the clock. You're going to have new protectees coming in at the RNC. President Trump is expected to announce who his vice president's going to be. So that team's going to come in to start to do protection there. In addition to that, you have your other protectees. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. It's going to be an intense few months. On top of the investigation, on top of the Secret Service looking at what happened here. Did we have, and again, I don't want to speak because we don't know what's going on, but again, how did this happen? What assets were requested by the agent on the ground? Were the correct assets requested? Did that agent get all the assets requested? If not, why? And then on goes the trail. So they really got so many things going on. So you're definitely going to see everything super amped up. And look, don't forget, it's not just the Secret Service. As we saw from the press conference before, PSP plays a role. Secret Service, you have to think of them like they're the conductor of an orchestra. They're the ones taking the lead. But you have local police departments stepping in. You have state police stepping in. So at the RNC taking place at Milwaukee, you're going to have all those local entities coming in because for them, they also don't want anything to happen. It's kind of like not on my watch.
Evie, thank you so much. I want to bring in now our NBC News law enforcement analyst, Carmen Best. She has been watching the coverage. And Carmen, I'm wondering where this goes in your view next. Obviously, you've heard Evie lay out the steps that the investigators will have to take moving forward, as there are a series of activities set to come on the horizon that the former president will be a part of.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that have to be considered here. Certainly, with this assassination attempt on former President Trump, any future events, whether they involve him or any political parties, will have to be looked at. There's always, as was mentioned earlier, the potential for copycats. There's also the potential for retaliation in some ways, depending upon how people perceive what the motive was. We don't know that yet, but what the motive was for our suspect who did the shooting tonight. So there are a lot of considerations. There will be a lot of ramped up effects for all of the future events, leading up to and probably even past our next election here.
Carmen, I'm going to ask you to stand by for a second. I want to go to our NBC News investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, who's been following this, who's been tracking this, who's been working his sources as this moves forward. And Tom, from the perspective of the investigation into the suspected shooter here, we know this person is dead. We know this person is in roughly his 20s, around 20 years old, from Pennsylvania. There is obviously a full court press now, presumably on this person's family members, on people who knew him, trying to understand what the motive may be. Investigators at that news conference we just watched wouldn't touch that. They didn't want to go near that because they said they just didn't have enough information yet to share.
That's right, Hallie. And as a matter of fact, if the name that we have, we did send one of our colleagues, Shaq Brewster, to that location. There's a significant law enforcement presence outside the address that is believed to belong to this individual. As you said, age approximately 20, from Pennsylvania, and if in fact this is the person, not a particularly long drive from where this occurred here today. This is the FBI is calling it an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. So that's what we know tonight. One of the things that happened here, we were told, and now the FBI has said on the record, that this individual did not have an ID on them. And so they're trying to use biometrics, think fingerprints, think potentially DNA, think certainly facial ID recognition to make sure that they have the right person, and also any sort of search warrant on a residence could help confirm that as well. I am poring over this individual's background and their history. I know law enforcement agencies up and down the East Coast are doing the exact same thing. Nothing initially sticks out. If this is in fact the shooter, there's no particular post, no manifesto that's been placed out there. Nothing we are seeing right now points to whatever it was that drove this individual to get on top of that roof today, approximately 150 yards from the presumptive Republican nominee, and start firing. And so obviously that's the reason why the FBI says we don't know exactly what the motive is, because that's all information that they're going to try and gather. So that's where the investigation stands right now. There's going to be a separate inquiry here, which is an inquiry into how this happened today from a security perspective. And we've been showing a map of where this individual was based on social news video we've been able to gather and photos that people took and posted and that we've reviewed. And as you can see, approximately 150 yards, roughly, between the roof of a company on the left and the stage on the right where the former president was. Now, as you and I mentioned earlier, this is a Google Earth shot. It's a moment in time, so you're not seeing the whole apparatus of the security that would have been there, and the stands and the press risers where we set up our cameras. So this would have looked different. The question is, did this individual have a clear line of sight from that rooftop to the stage where the former president was? And if so, how were they unnoticed? And should that area have had a more different or more robust law enforcement presence? Obviously, serious questions will be asked. There's pressure already in D.C., and there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Secret Service to put that out there. And then, as it's been alluded to by the former U.S. Secret Service agent who you've been speaking with, as well as our law enforcement analyst, Carmen Best, this changes everything. We knew we were looking at serious threats over the last several months, that we were going to be looking at several threats, serious threats, obviously through the election. We know what the political rhetoric and temperature is in this country, and now you've had an attempted assassination of the Republican nominee, or the presumptive one, and a former president of the United States. This will be as serious as it gets from a security perspective going forward for all these politicians. And that's going to be a significant concern and a significant drain on law enforcement. Police departments are down in staffing. They help out the U.S. Secret Service. The U.S. Secret Service has is not an infinite manpower organization, so they rely on law enforcement to help them. The drain on law enforcement as these two candidates traverse the country trying to make their case to be elected is going to be enormous. And then I think there's going to have to probably be a serious look at other elected officials across the country and what type of protection needs to be thought about there. It is a dark night, whatever you may think about the former president. It is a dark night for the country, period, and law enforcement has serious concerns this evening.
Tom Winter, thank you. Garrett Haake is with us as well. And Garrett, as I listened to Tom talk, he talks about obviously other elected officials, other politicians. And right now, tonight, there is a moment politically of near unity here with widespread condemnation of political violence on both sides of the aisle, as we are seeing a lot of reaction from here in Washington, but also around the world, from Israel to Ukraine and beyond. Garrett.
That's right. We've certainly seen that condemnation of political violence, but with it has come a fair share of finger pointing, Republicans blaming those on the left for stirring political violence, Democrats responding that Republicans had sort of brought this moment to the forefront through their own calls for political violence. Donald Trump talking about the attacks on Nancy Pelosi's husband, for example. A lot of back and forth along with the calls to tamp down such language. But in the meantime, you are also hearing from folks all across the world, everyone from Vladimir Zelensky to prime ministers from Europe and across the world, expressing their sadness at this moment, their relief that the former president has survived this attack. And I think beneath all that, the question of how did we get here and how much further will this go? In Washington, we know one of the directions it will go is towards investigation. Already we've seen letters sent to the director of the U.S. Secret Service asking her to appear before a Republican-controlled House committee the Monday after next. So I think what you're liable to see here in Washington and across the country is a major focus on this attempted assassination through the Republican convention next week, and then perhaps beginning with congressional hearings as early as the week following that. There have been calls from some of Donald Trump's allies in the Senate as well for that body to investigate this attack. So, Hallie, we are so much closer to the beginning of this story than the end, and I think it's quite clear from those outpourings of support from the traffic online that the whole world will be watching to see where this all goes.
Garrett, thank you. Stand by. To that point, I want to go to Evie Pampouras, former Secret Service agent. And when Garrett talks about, Evie, those moments that we expect to see potentially on Capitol Hill, possibly as soon as later this month, after the Republican National Convention, it will be the Secret Service in the hot seat.
It's going to be the Secret Service director, so that's Kimberly Cheadle. So she's going to go there, and they're going to ask questions. I think the basics, it's going to be the basic. How did you do the advance? What security plan was put in place? Now, the individuals that go out to do a security advance, it typically depends. You usually get, I think maybe for domestic, and I want to be careful as to how much I reveal, but you may get up to several days. So you'll go to a place, so we have this area here in Pennsylvania. They will send an agent out. It's called a site agent. That site agent is going to do an assessment. Where's the president going to go? Where are they speaking? Am I indoors? Am I outdoors? How many people are we looking at? And then they're going to set up that perimeter. Where should that perimeter go? They design it. How many magnetometers do I need? They work with local and state officials to get the manpower they need. So they're going to look at first the security plan that was put in place. Was it a good locked-in security plan? Then they're going to look at what resources was asked of this agent. And I can completely see them see Congress and others subpoenaing to see if is there email correspondence between the agents on the ground and headquarters. What are they asking for? Did they get what they asked for? And that's going to be the second component. Did the agents on the ground get what they asked for? Did they get the manpower that they needed? Then the next step is going to be what happened the day of the event. Did everybody perform as they were supposed to perform? Did Counter Sniper do their job? Did the agents on the ground do their job? What was missed? Was it local police? Again, you know, it's so early to tell because I know the agency that has responsibility, yes, it is the U.S. Secret Service. The thing is they don't do it alone. And so they have other entities in place, local law enforcement, state police that also help them. So there will be an assessment there. Did something happen there? It's going to be all these different layers. So the director is going to have to come in prepared and ready because they're definitely going to be asking very hard questions.
Evie Pampouras, former Secret Service agent. Evie, we're glad to have your expertise here on a night like this when there have been many fast-moving developments. And again, just to remind folks where we stand now, you are looking, of course, at that image now seen around the world of the former president raising his fist after having been shot by a bullet that he says pierced his right ear in an assassination attempt. The investigation ongoing. The suspected shooter dead, as is one other rally goer, one person who had simply showed up to this rally in Butler, Pennsylvania to support former President Trump. Two other people attending were badly hurt. I want to go to Garrett Hake now, who has covered the Trump campaign. And Garrett, even after this moment, we expect, of course, to hear at some point from the former president himself. That will be extraordinarily notable when he does choose to come in front of a camera to speak. And then after that, the Republican convention in Milwaukee, just a day and a half away.
Yeah, Hallie, it's incredibly striking because the next time we might hear from the former president could be him announcing who his vice presidential selection would be, someone who would also be immediately wrapped in a protective bubble by the U.S. Secret Service, now in the spotlight across the country and across the world for how this event tonight could happen. We spent the last 2 weeks talking about an unprecedented moment in Democratic politics. We're now there for the Republicans.
Garrett Haake, thank you very much. That concludes our NBC News special report. We're going to have seamless coverage picking up right now on our streaming network, NBC News Now, as well as on MSNBC, online at NBCnews.com. And we're preparing for a special edition of the Today Show tomorrow morning. For all of us here at NBC News, thank you for watching. I'm Hallie Jackson. We'll see you tomorrow.